Unity. My name is Ma'moon Awad. I will be exploring with you the first basics of Unity, and in this recording I will try to be brief and give you the basic things. So basically we will do the following. We will create a project in Unity, and this project will be 3D. I will give you the link how to do it, or the instruction how to do it. However, in the rest, I will be this will take time, so I'm not gonna wait until the creation of a project. I will leave you with that until you create it. So I expect you to do that offline. Anyway, we will create game objects, and after that we will manipulate the game object inside the Unity, and also we will look at some tools and hotkeys, and we'll look at the view tools for controlling the objects inside Unity. And finally, we'll look at how to move object with a basic formula using the direction and the position. And we will be talking, of course, to complete the lesson, we'll talk about game loop, which is part of all game objects, all game engines in the industry, of course. So let's start. First, we'll create a project. As a matter of fact, I have already created a project, 3D project, as you can see. And in any 3D project, you will see that by default, you will get two game objects, and you find them in the hierarchy. So in the hierarchy, you have all the game object characters, maybe background, terrains, maybe sky, everything. You will find them listed here. Also, you can also create what you want. You can create empty game object, you can create 3D, and you can add audio, and you can do many things. So the part where you can add objects for your game is here. If you look here at this part is the scene, and this part is the game. So there are two tabs on the top. The scene, where you can find the object, the layout of the object, and things. You can think of it as a prototype of your game. The game is what exactly you're gonna see when you run the game. So you have a scene and you have game. Most of the work that we'll be doing during the scene, once we run, we will move to the game tab where things is running there. Okay. In addition to that, you'll see in the hierarchy, if you click on the, for example, two things, it will be built in the camera. As you can see, here's the camera, and the camera will reflect the angle of the whole scene. So which angle you want? Is it from top, bottom? And you can control it. And we'll see in a second how. You'll see that if you click on camera here, this component or this game object, it's a game object, by the way. You'll see the attribute of the camera. So you'll find the transform, the position of the camera in the scene, the rotation. Current rotation is 0, and the scene is not scaled at all. And you'll see additional setup for the camera. We'll leave it as default, okay? Also, you'll find another component. By the way, this component doesn't exist in the 2D project, only in 3D. So in 3D, you'll find the camera and the directional light, where this is related to lighting and how you want the light to be reflected or to be spread in the scene. We're not gonna touch it today, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create, in the hierarchy, we're gonna create something in the left-hand side. We're gonna create a cube, and we're gonna consider this cube a player. Of course, at this moment, we'll use the built-in object inside Unity. Later on, we're gonna create our own characters step by step. So we're gonna create a cube, and we're gonna call it a player. So the player here is simply a cube. So here we come here, right click, and we point to 3D, and you say cube, and an object is created, and I can write here player. And as you can see from the player, you can see also it has a transform. By default, there are few components that are added to this cube. and these will be looked at later when we go in the detail of the course. One of them is collider, okay, one of them is mesh, one of them is renderer. Of course, if you want to cancel any of these, you can just uncheck this. You see, for example, the mesh here, there's no, let's say, contours of the or lines that's surrounding the cube here. But if you click here, now it came back. The collider is the same. We'll look at that later. But for now, this is the first character, which is a player. Now, let's look now, when you create a player here, you'll see this one, this part, which is this view tools that enables us to do many things. For example, the first tool here, it enables us to look or to zoom in and zoom out or go around in the scene, as you can see. So you can adjust how do we look at the scene from different perspectives. It allows us to roam around inside the scene. The second tool here, it allows us, for example, to move the object around. And notice that why I'm moving this object in one of the three direction. Again, the three direction, Y in the top, right Z, and X in the left, as you can see. Of course, we can change that. We'll look in a second. But if you look here, while we are moving things, the location here is changing. You can look again here. You see, it's changing accordingly in the scene. Another thing you can, for example, here you can make it bigger or make it scale it up and down. As you can see here, the scale part here is changing. If you look, we can scale it up and scale it down the way we want. In addition, you can also rotate. You can rotate the object, as you can see, the way you want. And once you rotate, you'll see that this angles or the amount of rotation for the object is changing, depend on the X or Y or Z or both. Okay. So this is the first object. Let's bring it back a little bit to its size. Of course, the way you can bring it back to that size, I can always come here and say reset. And as you can see, once you reset it, it becomes what? It goes back to its original sizes. Okay. Now let me look at the game. Here we go. How does it look? This object, how does it look while we are running the game? Well, I'm not running the game, but this is the game view. Now also we're gonna add another object, which is again 3D, and we're gonna use capsule. And this capsule also, I'm gonna call it reward. How about that? So this reward, let me move it a little bit far away from. So this is the second object, as you can see. This is the capsule, and also I can make it a little bit far away a little bit. Okay. So when I look at that, we'll have look how they look like. It's a little bit strange. It's like one in front of the other somehow. So I can change that. Okay, let me make it in front of it and see how does it look. So it doesn't seem its look. So I can change a little bit here. So the way things look like inside the what do you call it, the scene is controlled by the camera, and the camera is here, as you can see. Look here, the camera. Now if you move the camera, things are moving in the main camera, as you can see. Why? Because the camera perspective is deciding what's going on. Also here, this is the gizmo, and it tells you where's X, Y, and Z. This is Y, this is Z, and this is X. And of course, here's the perspective. And this is something we will cover a little bit at certain point. We'll talk about how do we view the scene. There are different ways to view the scene and different orientation, as you can see. If you just right-click here, you will see that different perspective here. So free, right, top, back, left, button. If you choose back, you will see something different here. You'll see here. Okay. Now still the reward is a little bit far away. Okay. It's not seen here for a reason, because it's a little bit far away. So one thing is always a good idea is to uh, reset the reward, so that when we have them, now we have them next to each other and we can move them. For example, here's the reward. I can move them a little bit here. Okay. If you look here back, they are next to each other. I can make it smaller. It seems to me it's very big, so let me make it smaller. As you can see, the reward. And even though the player, let's make it a little bit smaller. Okay. And here's the reward. Let me make it smaller too. Okay. And we can have them far a little bit, spread away, and they are not like this. See that? Again, let me see what else I have. So we created two game objects. The first one is called player and the second one reward. So from the naming, you can tell is that typically the player wants to pursue or to go and find the reward. So it's as if the reward will be staying somewhere, and we would like the reward will be somewhere, and with the player will be moving toward the reward to capture it and to have it. Okay, so this is the simple game that we're gonna do. So again, we created two objects, and let's look at the hotkeys. Alt left mouse, move the screen around. So if you say, if you are in the scene view and you say hold Alt, and you will see that you will be looking at the scene in different direction. Again, hold the Alt key, okay? And after that, use the left mouse, and you will see that you can look at the scene in different perspective. This is good when you design your scene and you have many objects and you want to look how they are relate to each other, how far each other, and so on and so forth. So this hotkey is important. Alt, you hold the Alt key, and in the left mouse, you'll move the scene as you can see here. Another one, Alt right mouse zoom in. You can use in the mouse the middle key to zoom in, zoom out. Okay. Or you can hold Alt and use the right key, as you can see the same thing. So again, you hold Alt and you use the right mouse key to zoom in, zoom out, or use the middle key to do the same thing. So these hotkey are something you need to get familiar with. In addition to that, the view tools. View tools enable, as I mentioned, this is the view tools. Okay, and it enables us to set and reconfigure the object the way we want. For example, here's the player. You can choose either by roaming around here or moving. So for example, the arrows here enables us to move the object in two directions. For example, X direction and Y direction. And if you notice that here, X and Y in the gizmo, this is the gizmo that tells you where's X, Y, and Z. See that? Now, what if I want to move it in the Z direction? You can move the gizmo a little bit or adjust it. So if you click here a little bit on this, the opposite of X, you will see that now Z is showing up here, and you can move it in the Z direction if you look here. You see that you can go back X here. Now it's a little bit becomes further away from the reward, but in what? In the Z direction. So this thing you need to get familiar so that you can master or you don't get lost during the game. And again, when you hit the game, you'll see the layout, how they look like during the game. There are others, for example, here how to rotate the object. And again, the red one is rotation against X. How do I know the red one is X? Because it's here. The gizmo tells you what is the red one, which is X axis. The green one is the Y, and finally the blue one is Z, which is not showing, but you can click here and you can see how does it rotate, as you can see in the Z direction. Okay, so these kind of things you need to master. Others, like here scaling, if you want to scale up and down, you can scale up and down, for example, make it as you can see here. The same thing, you can also, this is a general one, you can scale in all direction. And this is rotation. And finally, here's what edit bounding, if you want to edit the boundary of the object. But anyway, this is a good thing to explore, and we'll be using it from time to time, and I will let you know which one you need urgently. But generally, you need the first 3 or 4 from time to time to set up your game. Here's how does it look again. Okay. Here's the scene gizmo. The scene gizmo represents the view. How do you view, or the player, how does the player view the scene? And basically it is represented by the camera. How is the setup of the camera? Is it from up down? Is it orthographic, perspective? And we will look at that on time. Okay, the basic one, yeah, if you look right click here, the default is having free back perspective. Again, you can change that, but it will not affect the running. The only way you want to affect the running is by changing the camera. Here you change how you want to look at the scene, but what control how the object will be adjusted by the camera is the camera itself. So let's look. If you look at these objects, I hope you can see them here. There are the player here and the capsule here. If you want to look at the camera, for example, if I do, let's say, rotation. Where's the camera? Here's the camera. Okay, and of course I can move the camera. Let me move it like this. You see, if I move it up and down, what will happen? You see, everything is reflected against what? The camera, because the camera will reflect the whole scene. And the game also, this is the game, by the way. This is the gameplay. If I click here, you'll see it has adjusted accordingly, as you can see it. You can rotate it. You can rotate the camera. It's as if, of course, you can make it up. I can make it from the top a little bit. Look, if I bring it up, it's as if I am looking things from up, which means things are below me. You see that? At the same time, you can also rotate, and this what, of course, I can rotate around X or Y. Okay, so if I rotate around, let's say Y, which is the blue one, things become, you see, it's as if it looks in a different format. Again, this what control the scene. Again, it has changed. Why? Because I changed the setup of the camera, the location of the camera, the angle where the camera is looking. So this what control how things will look like. Okay, so this is the thing that you need to a little bit play around and see to master, not to get freaked out if things are messed up. Again, you need to look at the gizmo, the tools or the view tools of adjusting things. And now let's do something which is related to a little coding here. So now currently, if I run the game, let's run the game, what do we get? Nothing, actually. You will see 2 objects. The first one is the player, which is the cube, and the reward, which is something like capsule. And nothing happening there. As we can see, it takes time. Nothing happening. They are stand still, nothing going on, right? Let me stop it. So let's do something, which is what? I would like the player to move towards the capsule to capture it. Okay? So this is simple movement that we can do. And to do that, one thing to do that is basically to write script, to add a script. So in the asset here, as you can see here, the project, and there's console in the down here, you will see we'll use them together. So in the project, create a new folder and call this folder scripts. Okay. Okay, and under scripts, I will create another folder too, and I call this, of course, this organization thing. I want to know where's my code for each scene is. So that's why I'm creating a subfolder under the scripts, and I will call it first project, and let me click here, go there, and here I will create a script. Now create C# script, and I will call it here player script. And this script, as you can see, a view of the part of the script is here, which is basically it has two methods, start and update, and we will look at that, and we'll look at more about that. Okay, but the script is created by the way, if you go to the player, it's still the script must be listed here, by the way. So I did not add it as a part of the player, so you need to add it. So one way to add it, either you add a component script and move it, or you can just move it like this. And you will have player script here. Okay, so what's going on? So what will happen when we add a script? Okay, now let's look at the script. Okay, and after that, here, let me open the script and let me Microsoft Visual Studio, and we'll look at the script from Microsoft Visual Studio. And we'll look at the structure of the script, some information that we need to know about, and so on and so forth. Now, you will see that at the top is the import part, like in Java, import. Here they are using the keyword using rather than import. The second thing in the name of the script, and I call it player script. And there is the colon to indicate extension or extend in Java, which means inheritance. So this script will be inheriting from a basic class in Unity called monoBehavior. And monoBehavior, it has a lot of functionality and features that we can utilize. That's why the player script is a child of monoBehavior class, which is the super class or the parent class. Okay. To be honest, most of the time we're not gonna touch the constructor. So the constructor is a little bit, we're not gonna play with it at all in this course in Unity, but we're gonna use 2 or 3 methods very frequently. And today we're gonna use start and update. So start, it's this method is to configure the object. Okay, this method to configure the object. What do you mean configure the object? Here, if we have certain kind of value we need to set up to do things and so on and so forth. Let's say, for example, I want to change the color of the cube. How about that? So the default color here is what here? The default color is gray, or there's no color. So I can do the following. Let's set up the color randomly. So I'll literally bring a method here and put it in Unity. So this method basically grabs a color, GetRandomColor. I am using the UnityEngine class, random, get me a random color. So it picks any random color and give it to me. So I want to set up my cube with that color. To do that, we just say, we get the component of the cube, just because this script belongs to the cube now, called renderer. So let's call it my renderer, let's say. And you say get component renderer. So I got the renderer, and after that, I change the renderer, let's say material, color, and I give it, if you look here, it proposed to me a color. No, I just want get random color. Okay, so as you can see here, this is a configuration part. It is done one time when the object is created. Okay, here, if we run, you will see that the cube will have, every time you run, it will have randomly different coloring. It keeps looking black. I don't know why. Let's see. It's a little green here. So it depends on his blue and so on and so forth. Okay. So the start method is called only once in the object. And there's another method called update. Now, before I continue, let me explain a little bit what's going on in Unity, and almost this is a standard in all game engines that's going around. So let me show you here what happens when you run a game. Of course, there will be a chapter on this when we come forward during the semester. But for now, let's understand a little bit what happens when we run a game. Now, notice that in any game, you might have many game objects going on here. And in addition to that, you have other components that are part of Unity, such as the physics, the math, and many others. So what happens is that when you start again here, the game, you'll see that all game objects inside the game, here I am putting, there should be dot, which is in game 1, 2, n, and other component of the game, they will be configured and instantiated or created. Now the creation process starts how? By calling the constructor, and in addition to that, calling the start on each game. So the game will not start, or the animation will not start, or anything will not start before we create all the objects in the game. Once all the objects are created, it will be configured in the method called start. This is the one that we've seen here, where, for example, I am putting a color, a certain random color here. Okay. Of course, I can do the same thing for what do you call it, for the reward. I can come here to the reward. I can say, for example, right click, new, and I say C#, and I say here, let's say reward script. Okay. And in the reward script, I can come to the reward here, and I'm add the reward script there, and I can add, let me see, it takes time. Okay. Now I take the reward, I go to the reward, I pick it or I select it, and I take the reward and add it here, as you can see. Now the reward script belongs there, as you can see here. I can open it in the same way. And also I can come here and do the same thing. So I can, I'm sorry, I can copy this code to change the color. And with the reward, I'm not gonna use a random thing. I'm going to use some kind of color, and let's make it blue, not blue, gray, green. Okay, how about that? Okay. Now, notice that now I have two objects. So Unity will run the start of the first object and the start of the second object. And during the start, the configuration happening. So if I run, you can tell if I run what will happen. The player will have some color, and the capsule will always have what? Green, because I configured that way. Now, this is the configuration part. Now, what comes later is something important, which is the update loop. And the update loop means that the game engine, Unity, will be updating the game very frequently, which means as if there is a loop. And during the loop, he will be calling the update method on each object. Notice that here, we mentioned that there is update method here. Currently, this update method for the reward, and this is update method for the player script. Okay. Currently, they are empty. Nothing's there. Okay. But what will happen actually is that by default, automatically, Unity will be running the update method for each object guess what, very frequently. And to know how often Unity will call them, okay, why do they call them? They call them to render the game or to update the whole game. Sorry. So updating the game will happen by calling the update method on each object. And sometimes we have some code in the update, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have the update method, sometimes we don't. For example, in the reward, I don't have anything in the update. I can remove it. I don't need it. Nothing's there. Okay, in the player script, I need something here. Basically, I'm going to move the object or the player, let's say, move the player towards the reward. Okay, that's what I want to do. I want to move the player toward the reward. So I need to write code here, and we need to identify logic. How can we identify, for example, one, identify the location of the reward, right? Second, we need to identify direction of movement, and finally we need to move. And moving means what? Change the position to move toward the reward. Okay, and we'll look at each one of them. How can we do it? But all of this logic will be happening in the update. Now, if we go back here, you'll see thing will be rotating automatically. So the code there will be called very frequently. And to be honest, how often is it is called? It's different from, by the way, from machine to another. But typically, it is happening every 0.02 seconds, which means each update method will be called 50 times in a second. This is very fast, right? Very, very frequent. And this is very important. Why? To make the game as if it's natural. Movement is natural. Movement is realistic. To do that, we need to have this kind of very quick movement. Of course, only the update. No, there are other methods will be called, and we will come to them later. There is update, fixed update, and there's also late update, and others. We'll look at them later. But for now, let's stick with update for movement. Okay. One thing we need to understand is that this 0.02 seconds, it's called something, or we don't have to memorize it, by the way. It's already there in Unity, called under time delta time, which means the time between the two calls of the update. So how often the loop is repeated. So it's repeated every 0.02 seconds, maybe different a little bit. How do we know? We can use a variable called time.delta time. Okay. So this is how can we do it. So let's get back and see how can we make things happening. So we need to identify the location of the reward. So the reward location, we need to identify it. Basically here, I know that I am a player and there is a reward, and this reward, this dude, it has a location here. It has a position, right? So do I need, how to get them here? Again, we can do different kind of things. Today we will use a very simplistic way. We're gonna hard code the location. We're gonna hard code the location of the reward as one way. So in the player script, I'm going to define a public transform, okay, and I will call it reward position or transform, okay, reward transform. I'm gonna save, okay, and once you do that, something will happen in the inspector. If we go back in the inspector here, and I click on the player, look here at the player script, you have what? Reward transform. You see that? Reward. This is the parameter or the variable that I defined in the script. It will be showing here. So I have the chance to set it up, to initialize it. And the way I initialize it, I want the location or the object itself, which is the reward. So I will move the reward like this, and I put it here. Let me do it again. Here we go. You see? So here I am setting the reward transform value to the reward transform of the reward. So it's initialized. Now that, what does that mean? It means that now I have initialized it, of course, initialize in the inspector. Okay, so I know that where's the location. Okay, so now I know what is the position of the reward. Now I need to identify the direction, so I can do that by saying vector3 direction, and I can say, as I mentioned in the class, the direction will be the position of the target minus my position. So the position of the target will be reward transform dot position minus now my position, which is my position. You see that? So identify direction in terms of formula is gonna be the target position minus, here we're talking about what? Vectors. So the target position minus my position. So I know now which direction I should go. Okay. Now, once I have the direction, I can just, starting from my position, and move towards there. Okay, so what I can say now, what's my position here? So I can say vector 3, my position, equal transform position. Okay, and one important thing you should know that the transform, you cannot change the transform position by itself. You can get a copy, okay, update it, and after that assign it back. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm getting copy of the position of my position, layer position. Okay. Now I want to change it. Okay. So I will say my position equal my position, and I will add direction. Okay. And now I have to go back and say, of course, this is the movement, by the way. This is the movement. I'll define it. Let me, under number 3 is the movement here. The last thing is to update my position. So I will say transform position my position. Okay. So as you can see here, the the 3 steps, all algorithmic steps in the update. Again, I am deciding based on the position of the reward. I'm deciding the direction. So the reward position minus my position. Now, after that, I need to edit my position. I cannot edit my position right away. I have to get a copy. So I'm getting a copy in a vector 3 of my position. I change it, so I move it a little bit towards the direction. And after that, I am doing what here? Setting the position. If you save and you run, you can run and see what's going on here. You'll see they are stuck to each other. They are not moving at all. It's as if they moved what? Or the player moved toward the reward right away. There's no animation, there's nothing. Why? Why is that? The reason behind that is that the update method is called almost 50 times in 1 second. So you will not notice the movement. So one way to identify or to make things a little bit realistic is by introducing speed. And the speed could be 1 to 2 or 2. Let's make it 1, for example. And a typical thing is that to slow things down, multiply the direction with the time delta time speed. Okay. Why we are doing this? To slow down the movement, because the update method will be called 50 times in 1 second. So you will not notice any kind of what? Of movement, because very fast. So if we identify the movement, it's as if to slow down the movement. okay, because we are going to consider update will be called 50 times a second, we can multiply with delta time the speed, and the speed if we want to make it faster or slower. Okay, now let's run again and let's stop it here. Okay, run again and see what will happen. You see what happens now? It went all the way until it reaches what? The reward, and it stopped there. Of course, I can move to the scene part, and I can do something. For example, I can move the reward. If I say the reward here, here's the reward. If I move the reward, look, it will go behind it. It's in the. It's, by the way, the game is running. By the way, but here I am changing the position of the reward, and since I'm changing the position of the reward, you will see that the player is moving based on the logic that we did behind what? Behind the reward. You see that? Okay, and until it reaches and it stops. Okay, now why does it stop? It doesn't go through it, by the way. If you look at the code here, now the direction, I'm calculating the direction by subtracting the position of the reward minus the subtraction of the player. Now if they match, the direction is 0 and the amount of change is 0. That's why it stops there. Okay, let's see what else. Okay. Okay, let's do something fun a little bit, and let's, instead of speed 1 here, notice that I'm going to create a speed of the player randomly. So I'm going to say the following: speed equal, I will use random, it's a standard one, and I say range, so to create a random speed, and I will say it's between 0.1 and or maybe 1 and 1 or 2, let's say. Okay, and let me put F to indicate float because speed is float. Okay, so now every time you run, the player will be initialized in different speeds. It could be 1, 1.5, 1.3, and so on and so forth. Okay, so if I go back again here and I run, you will see different things going on. You see? Okay, let me do something fun here, and let me, for the player, let's say, let me stop it here. Okay, and let me, in the player, I can do something. I can copy the player, by the way. I can see control copy and control V. How many players do I have now? I have plenty, right? Let me put them somewhere here. Let me player 1, let me move him here, player 2, player 3. So I created 3 copy of the players who will be looking or pursuing what? Here we go, you see? All of them followed the reward. Now I can go to the scene and it's running right away. So I can pick the reward and see what will happen if I move it. You see all of them, some of them faster than others. You see that? And they are moving around what? The reward, as you can see. You see how easy to create object, to do things, and notice that the three players, they are copy of the original player and they are following the same script. However, in object-oriented, remember that things are based on objects. So each object will run his own copy of the script rather than a common or sharing the same script. Okay. Finally, we would like to know, for example, how to debug our code. So one way to debug is to print things. And to print things, you use debug.log. And we'll use the formatting $sign. And here I'm going to print, for example, the location of player. Okay. And if you want to put a variable, you put surrounded with the curly brackets. So I will say transform dot position. Okay. Also, you can print the color. I don't know what's the color because it's random. So I will say color colon, and I'll put here the color, which is in this case my renderer material. It's a long, but you'll get familiar with that. And maybe the speed, and the speed will be speed. Okay. So these three information I put in the start to get printed only once. Okay. So if I run now, before I run, remember the output will go to a console. So I will switch to a console. If you run now, you will see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 players. All these messages was printed for them in terms of speed, in terms of coloring, in terms of location, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, it is very interesting to see how often things are happening in the update. Suppose in the update, I put, let's say, the debug message here, the location of the player, color, and this. Suppose I put it here, okay? And what will happen? You'll see things will be going what? Crazy. Things will be going what? Crazy. Of course, they are. Let me take off the color here a little bit because it's not known here inside. Okay. What will happen to this message? You will see that this message will be printed 50 times in a second. And we have 4 objects, 50 times 4, 200 times in a second. So it is not a wise decision to put debugging message in update unless you are in need to do that. Let's do that and see how crazy it's going to be. Look at the console and what will happen here. You see? Because they are moving, we are moving. Even at the end, they will stabilize and the location will be fixed. You see that? But still printing, by the way. Still printing. You see, still printing, still printing. Why? Because the update method is called in the game object 50 times a second in average. And that's what's going on. So you need to be careful or to be aware of that. Of course, I'm going to remove these, the player 1 and 2 and 3. I don't need them. And I have only 1 player. So I came back to the origin. And I can do that, of course. You see that? You are free to do many things in Unity.